Guys, today we are going to talk about Promea and talk about Miyabi. I already have a video on this, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So by the time you guys actually get around to watching this video, if you're on stream, you get things way earlier. But by the time YouTube gets around to watching this particular video, I would have already released my Miyabi versus Promea video. Is Promea that good? Because I'm in a dilemma. I want to pull for Billy and Promea, but I'm not feeling it overall. Like, these characters are not hyping me up. Even though gameplay wise, they look fun. Maybe I'll start saving for Sunbreaker, and I feel the game is lacking something. Why or what it is? What do you think? Red, I don't have a direct answer to that question. Like, I guess if you really just don't want to pull either, I would say don't, right? Like, you can wait. But maybe what I talk about in the video will help you out.
Are you tired of losing? Are you tired of losing those 50-50s to bullshit? Well, don't worry, big dog, I got just the deal. Let me show you a popular website that helps gamers buy more for less. Not only can you score games for less, but they've also gotten a partnered top-up services, meaning you can buy your pulls cheaper too.
Oh, that's nice.
On top of that, Aniba offers something else I haven't seen any other site do: a 10% cash back with each purchase. Now I get cheaper pulls and my money back. But wait, there's more. Using my link in the description box will get you all set up to start saving more money today. Now get out there and go pull that new character.
So guys, we're going to kind of jump into, which you should be able to see here. We're on Prydwen. Now, I know everyone doesn't like Prydwen for what it is, but I'm using Prydwen as a means to visually represent, if that makes sense, right? Like, visually represent what the community thinks, and then, you know, kind of where we are. So if we're just looking at this from the perspective of what we have going on right now, tier 0, tier 0.5, I'm going to try and, like, I'm going to try and refrain from like speaking or critiquing Prydwen stuff and whatnot, but it's really hard to do that. There's way too many fucking characters in tier 0. There's way too many characters in tier 0.5. It is what it is. This is just way too much. This is way too much. No. Yeah. Okay. I'm critiquing. I didn't want to. Let me try and read criteria. Sometimes whenever I go over the stuff in Prydwen, people like cry about the criteria and how like I didn't read the criteria in the change logs. Promea added to tier 0.5. Promea has come on as a strong unit who excels within her niche. High anomaly buildup and a bloom buffing. She's very flexible, able to run in stun or some dual anomaly teams with similar performance metrics, and her multipliers are unquestionably strong. Such a power budget seems like a necessity when considering her peers, and indeed, she more than manages to hold her own. Unfortunately, even if her numbers are good, she needs a place to make use of it, whereas Arya has plenty of Ether Week boss fights to fight. The constant anti-shilling that Miyabi has received and the ever-increasing count of half-defense bosses hurts her prospects. She certainly has the potential to rise a tier with more Bloom or Wind anomaly agents, but as it stands, she's at a high risk of being a one-patch wonder, getting good scores on her own boss, but faltering in the grand scheme of things. As it stands, we're debuting her at tier 0.5, but we'll keep a close eye on her in the future as new agents and enemies in 3.0 may significantly improve her value. Okay, I think that is literally the, oh, and then I never read Cecilia. We didn't even update for Cecilia because I'm like almost positive they're wrong, but I have a completely different opinion on Cecilia. Cecilia added to tier 0.5 with a partner tag for Seed. Cecilia is actually quite a strong character. She may be niche as her kit ties her strictly to electric teams, and the emphasis on defense shred restricts her from working well with any rupture agent, but she is surprisingly good. Despite functioning as a semi-sub DPS, she still contributes a significant amount of damage when run alongside her. Additionally, unlike Orphe, she brings a ridiculous amount of days build that makes running a support third far more forgiving. That said, she is niche, being a subpar option on any team that isn't Seed, and demanding vertical investments to match equivalent teams as a main DPS. We believe that she can sit comfortably in the tier 0.5 slot, but only when being run with Seed, as otherwise her performance does take a hit. Okay, yeah, I knew I was gonna disagree with that. All right, cool. So let's talk about this, right? If we're looking at this just from the perspective of what's going on in the game, I'll try and like clear the board with tier 0 real quick, just because it's like the easiest thing. But tier 0 and tier 0.5 are gonna be a little muddy because I would just combine them, okay? And then I guess if I wanted to, let me see if we can also do the tier list thingy. Hold on. I'm gonna try and visually represent the same things that we can talk about, right? Okay, so tier 0, Ye Xiong Wang, Yi Xuan, Arya, and Miyabi. These are the DPS for tier 0, right? Well, at least regarding Prydwen. Normally, I would agree with this. However, I'm just gonna keep it a buck. The only tier 0 DPS in the entire game is YSG. There is no other tier 0 DPS in the game. I understand where we are. I understand if we're separating things from a crit DPS versus an anomaly DPS. It's literally just YSG. This is the only tier 0 DPS in the game. the way the game has moved across the board, the way that it's going, right? Like the future of the game right now, she's the only one up there. She's an attack-based character or a crit-based character, a DPS that ignores everything about anybody in the game. She gives herself her own stun window whenever the she wants, and she benefits from almost every single supportive or attack-based team in the game. At some point, you probably would be able to get away with running her on some type of weird anomaly setup with Yuzaha as well. So it is what it is. Now we move on into what I would consider an actual tier 0.5. Tier 0.5 is going to consist of characters that used to be tier 0. So a tier 0.5 DPS is going to look something like, obviously we have Miyabi in there. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. We have Arya in there as well. Promea is also in there. Ishwin obviously is in there. And then maybe Cecilia, but actually there is no maybe, definitely Cecilia. Cecilia is also arguably in tier 0.5 at this point. Even without Seed, this character is fucking nutty. It is what it is. Let's try and break down why I'm saying what I'm saying about these particular characters. I would also throw Yudhari in here under certain conditions, but I want to talk about that a little bit more because I need to make some separations, okay? So tier 0.5, if you want to think about it like a tier 0.3, you can. It's not really a tier 0.3. It's probably easier to go down, but whatever. Sanbi and Hari, Yudhari, and Sanbi. No, let me explain. The first two that I want to talk about when it comes to Miyabi and Ishwin is Miyabi as a character has stood the test of time. I really don't have to go over Miyabi and like why she is what she is. However, we have gotten so far past a point where Miyabi is constantly fighting against negative matchups. On top of that, for instance, with Butcher currently in the game and Bringer, who recently came back to the game and is, moving forward, she's not having a great time. You need to work your ass off. And when I say work your ass off, I mean, you need cracked out builds and you got to work your ass off. Okay. It's just gotten to a point now where it's easier to run someone else over Miyabi given that context. Okay. And they have been giving us, as far as like in-game across the board, they've been giving us less and less Miyabi favored matchups. What is in her favor though, pretty much no matter what rotation we're in, is Shiyu defense. In any Shiyu defense, since they've changed the way Shiyu works, Miyabi has been a top contender, a top player. She's been a top performer in every single Shiyu defense by far since the change of Shiyu defense. And so because of that, we keep her there, right? It's like she still shows her worth and power, which is why I'm saying she's still a tier 0.5 character. Now, what's going to happen to Miyabi, right? This is something that I hear people mentioned. I don't think people are calling it out. Once Wind gets here, once we get proper characters to deal with Vortex or take advantage of Vortex and Windswept and the bosses, the matchups start to move towards that mechanic, Miyabi immediately gets shut down. There might be some unique, very specialized build or team that works with Miyabi and Windswept. In the event they change Miyabi's kit to include an addition specifically for Vortex, this would fix Miyabi for future problems. And so what is that future problem? So right now in the game, we do have a wind enemy, but we don't have any wind things to test it with. We did see this in the live stream though. When an enemy is windswept, they go into Vortex, they can only be Vortexed. Again, they can't have any disorders unless it's like polarity disorder, right? And even then that's very scuffed. You can't trigger any other anomaly attribute. Everything just turns into wind. This doesn't help Miyabi at all. They have successfully, finally, after years, found a way to make a mechanic that just is 100% anti Miyabi. There's nothing she can do about it at this current point in time. When that happens, Miyabi is going to plummet. Not to tier 3. I'm bringing her down for a visual representation before anyone loses their shit when they see the video. I'm only bringing her down for a visual representation of what's happening. When Wind gets into the game and it starts to become a part of the meta or the meta, Miyabi is going to plummet. She is going to become a character that you predominantly find yourself using inside of Shiyu defense, or if they bring Butcher or Bringer back, right? If they bring very specific 100% in Miyabi's favorite bosses, that's what's going to happen. For that, she's still in tier 0.5 until then. Use Nangong Yu, right? When using Nangong Yu is not going to help you in Wind either. That's the fucked up part. I guess it could because it forces the disorders. So maybe that would help you out, but I don't know. So dependent on Nangong Yu as a character, like as a partner, that like from now on, from this point forward, you have to play Miyabi Nangong. You can't play anything else. It just ruins the character in my opinion. Ishwin, tier 0.5. I really feel like I shouldn't have to explain this too much, but Ishwin is just positive or neutral matchups across the entire board. She has no negative matchups out of the entire game. I say this all the time. She still has the damage to back it up. Vertical investment is very good for her. I think M1 or M2 is really like where it shines. Her W engine is awesome. It's relatively easier to build her. She has a lot of great team supports, and she has no problems clearing whatever it is in the game right now, whether or not you use Lucia or with Pan. Obviously, using Lucia means you have to do less work. Using Pan means you have to do more work. Primordial is a pretty negative matchup. Okay, so maybe one. Primordial, because I just played Primordial today. I definitely didn't play with Ishwin, but I guess I wouldn't have done that anyway because it doesn't look like I don't know why I would play Primordial into Ishwin. That's a weird play on my behalf, so I don't know, but maybe once. All right, so Primordial is her negative matchup. Call it a day. It is what it is. Cool. Here's where the rest of the list comes into play. And as we come back over here and we see it, everything is in tier 0.5. Wouldn't Miyabi still have majority of a good boss matchups from 2.7 downwards? Yes, but that's the thing, right? We are getting less and less of these bosses. The last few bosses for the last few patches, it's been like maybe one thing that Miyabi can deal with, and then the others have all been something for season 2. Something with miasma, something that's catered towards attack, something that's more favorable for Arya, something that's more favorable for Yidhari, right? Or even Hugo, like the Thrall, something more favorable for that, right? We've been getting more and more of those bosses and less of the previous bosses because they phase them out. It took us what was it? Bringer didn't come back for a full, was it 8 months? Bringer was gone for like a full 6 to 8 months, something like that, before he finally made a return. Miyabi can't crit DPS her way through and clear though. She can, but once Wind gets here, it's not gonna help. They've created Wind, and Wind is anti-Miyabi. It actively works against what Miyabi wants. So unless you have infinite EX skills, you're not going to be able to get your EBAs in the same combos, rotations, or fashions that we've been doing with Miyabi over the course of time. This isn't like a pull advice thing here either. You can pull whoever you want or play whoever you want. That's not what this is. I'm just going over this in terms of like meta. Going back to what I was saying, right, with the problem here. So as we can see right here, we have Arya in tier 0, Miyabi in tier 0, Promea is in tier 0.5, Ishwin is in tier 0, blah, 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 blah. Both of these characters are tier 0.5. If Miyabi is sitting up here, both of these characters also have to sit up here. And the only reason I'm saying that is because it's now getting to a point, even though Miyabi is the best anomaly DPS in the game right now, they have designed 2 new anomaly characters specifically to basically just out damage Miyabi. They just do it, and it's easier to play them. You get rewarded for less mechanical play. You don't have to do as much work. You don't have to make as hard of a build. And both of them don't need their W engine. They love them, absolutely. Arya doesn't need hers and Promea doesn't need hers. Miyabi no W engine suffers a lot in comparison to the 2 of them. Arya is also pumping out a ton of damage. Peach bombers all over the place. Her team works phenomenally. She has great free-to-play options like Lycon and Zhao as the backups, or even Lycon and Yuzu, Lycon and Suna, whatever you want to use, right? Lycon Lucy, don't do that, but still you could do it, right? All that kind of stuff. Same thing with Promea. However, the lower cost you get for Promea, the worse this character is going to perform. We were talking about it last night. I was trying to figure out a way to word it, and eventually I figured it out. Once Promea gets a hold of premium teammates, Nangong Yu, Yuzuha, like whatever, right? As long as you give Promea her premium support, her premium stunner, her premium sub DPS, Vivian, this character leagues better in terms of performance. You start taking that away and she performs significantly worse. And so no, Ploxer, it's not just less cost equal worse performance. Oh my God, face. That's not what I'm saying. Or rather, I know I said that, but that isn't the message that's being pushed. The message that I'm pushing now that I finished that part of Promea is that if you take Arya or Miyabi and give them low cost teams, they still score insanely high. The lowest cost team currently in the game with the highest score is still Cecilia. Even in non-favorable matchups, even when the enemy is not boosting the shit out of her electric damage, she still has the highest score with the lowest cost team in the game right now. The whole point is to bring in perspective of what we have going on. It's getting to a point where these 2 in particular are going to be the better anomaly DPS over Miyabi. It is what it is. They aren't affected by Wind as much as she is. In fact, Promea benefits from it. I wouldn't be surprised if Arya benefits from it as well. None of them are being cock-blocked. Now, I will say something that Prydwen mentioned was that because of the anti-shilling with Miyabi, this affects Promea. this isn't inherently true. It does affect her in the sense of like matchups, right? So if there's a boss that is just straight up anti-ice, like, oh, I have 90% ice res, that affects her, yes. If there's a boss that's just, you can't freeze it, that doesn't affect Promia in the slightest, because the act of freezing still happens, right? Like it kind of like skips over it. So the way the game works is it'll still code it in there, like, okay, boom, you still went through the process of triggering your ice anomaly, and then shatter happens, will give you the boost. Promia and Arya are, as I explained to some of you guys before in previous videos, Anomaly has attack has it too, but Anomaly has different attack types or damage types. You have Disorder, you have regular Anomaly, which we can consider like Hyper Carry or like Mono Anomaly. We have a Bloom. I want to say that's it, right? Just those three. I might be missing one off the top of my head, but for now, let's just focus on Disorders and Blooms and the main thing. So when it comes to Wind, the future of whatever's happening with the meta, any character, will take Jane for instance. Jane eats with Wind because she doesn't need a reaction. Jane doesn't need a disorder. She doesn't need another partner to trigger a disorder for her or do anything else. She just keeps repeating assault, 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 assault. I'm good. I'm chilling. Just boost up my damage performance, right? Arya with the blooms, Promea with the blooms. I just need to trigger this one attribute once. The moment I trigger it once, I get to get 5,100 of blooms from that one attribute counter. I'm good. So when Wind comes and it's like, oh, you can't trigger any other attributes anymore, you can just only trigger this vortex, that is still an anomaly, an attribute counter, which means guess what? Wow, you just got triggered by an attribute counter? Okay, cool, great. A bloom, a bloom, a bloom, a bloom. They're moving the direction of Anomaly in a way where Anomaly is basically attack now. Again, Anomaly is losing the flavors of Anomaly. We aren't using elemental reactions, so to speak. If you need a very easy understanding of what I'm talking about, you don't have to mix up elements anymore, right? You're not benefiting from the attribute counters. You're not building a team based off shock. It doesn't matter, right? The tick, 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 that doesn't matter. You're not building teams off burn. The tick, 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 it doesn't matter. You're not building teams based around freeze. Oh, I froze you. Now I get like 20 seconds of whatever. Nope, doesn't matter, right? Because Promea doesn't give a fuck. The only character that did give a fuck was Miyabi, and they countered that, so it's gone. You're not building teams off of Assault, because even though Assault has flinch, a lot of people aren't really doing that, right? The whole thing with Assault back then and why it was so strong is because I could pop Assault and whatever the fuck you were doing, hard stop. We added Seth into the game. Seth was like, hey, bro, I got this big ass charge blade that has the strongest interrupt in the game at this current moment in time. I'm beating other people's ultimates with my fully charged EX skill. What do you want me to do? I want you to fully charge EX skill, hit that motherfucker right there. Then I'm going to EX flip on top of him about 2 seconds later, and I'm gonna trigger a flinch. Then he can't move. One of us is gonna get our ultimate, and we're gonna repeat the process. We're never gonna let him move. We're gonna stun lock this guy. Say less. Great teamwork. Awesome. But now that doesn't matter anymore. This is why I'm saying these two are outperforming her in the grand scheme of the rest of this year. Unless something drastically changes, these two are gonna become the new premier Anomaly DPS, because they're basically attack characters dressed up in Anomaly, right? Same thing we said with Miyabi, except they are legit just like this. Now, once we get past this point and we start talking about the rest of them, I can compare Yidhari to Yi Xuan. Originally, I would have told you Yi Xuan and Yidhari are on the same thing, which for the most part they are, right? If something's weak to ice, then you bring Yidhari. If something's weak to ether, then you bring Yi Xuan. However, recent news has been given to me. Scores have been given to me. She is not performing on the same level as an M0W1 Yi Xuan. She's close, but she's just not cutting the cake. And there is more optimization with an Yi Xuan team than there is Yidhari to stretch out a little bit more damage performance. So let's just say that the most optimal Yidhari caps out at 50k. The most optimal Yi Xuan would cap out at 57, 58, 59, something like that, right? That's why I wouldn't say they're in the same ballpark. Finally, we have Cecilia. I'm a firm believer Cecilia is literally in tier 0.5. After more than 3 weeks, I've played this character and tested this character. I've watched this character. I've looked into this character. Literally for, I'd say at this point, it's creeping up on 2 months. 2 months of just dedicating time to looking into Cecilia at an M0W1 baseline. Her performance in not just electric weak bosses or electric weak matchups, but even neutral matchups and some negative matchups, she is still performing well over, from what I've seen with like good players, 40k. If we needed an average player perspective, right? Someone that isn't like going toe to toe with things. I'd say she's still performing over 30, 35K, somewhere along those ballparks, but I don't have every single player score available to show off, right? There's no way I'd be able to tell you guys like the average, whatever, for every single fucking player. From what I've seen, everybody uploading the character, from my own personal experiences with the character, from my own test, she is performing at the highest caliber right now. Doesn't matter what it is. As long as it's not a strictly negative matchup, like it just, and you can't shock them, you can't electrocute them, they don't even get phased by electric, like that's it, right? She can't do anything. As long as it's not one of those matchups, she's eating, she's chilling. And this is without Seed, all right? When you add Seed onto the team, that number skyrockets. She is creeping into kill territory at M0W1. The moment you vertically invest past that, M1 Seed, M1 Cecilia, or an M1 Astra, you are now entering kill territory for, again, an incredibly cheap cost. This character is disgusting. They've created the perfect Orphe, if that makes sense, right? A sub DPS character that has the damage capabilities of a main DPS, give or take them being on field, right? They have support-based tools in their kit, buffing somebody up with 1,000% attack, or my bad, plus 1,000 attack, giving somebody crit damage buff, giving somebody damage buff, shredding defenses for aftershock or electric defenses respectively, right? They have all these things and they have a little bit extra. Now, what Cecilia has that Orphe doesn't is the corrode bone, being able to not only inflict DOT that just lasts for an X period of time or just dumps a ton of damage onto the enemy at once, multiple enemies at once, because everyone gets hit. It's an AoE, it's not a single target thing. And she also builds up the days ridiculously fast, essentially replacing your stunner on the team. So now you can play dual attack plus support and you get all of the value from it. You could also play it in reverse, dual attack and a stunner, and still get all the value for it, especially if you're playing Seed and Cecilia, because they both give each other all the buffs they want. They both shred the defenses of anything they touch, and then Trigger, if you're using Trigger, or Pulchra, both give you buffs and debuffs on the enemy. No matter how you build a team with Cecilia, given the fact that it's like a very strong team, right? You're building a team that's meant to perform, not some bullshit. You are clearing. She is an insane character right now. I can't see a future where this character isn't insane anymore unless they pull a Miyabi. If they start anti-Cecilia-ing the rest of the game, that's the only way this character goes down. So going back to the Prydwen tier list, I just can't agree, right? We've already talked about how no character at this current, no anomaly, no other DPS, but especially an anomaly DPS. No other DPS is tier 0 except Ye Xunguang. We already talked about that. We move into tier 0.5. The only other one that will be DPS that I honestly, I can't even see Alice still being tier 0.5 either. The only reason I say Alice is just not remaining as a tier 0.5 DPS at this current moment in time is simply because, where's baby girl? Alice is not outputting the same amount of damage or performance as these two as quickly as they are. You take an Alice team right now and you throw it into any form of in-game content versus an Arya team, I can close my eyes, jack off with one hand, and just butt slam for a free 40K. I can't do that with Alice. She's just not doing it anymore. I can take Arya into things that she's not even supposed to be fighting and still pull back a 35K. And the same thing applies to Promea. These characters are ridiculous. Now, if we start including Mindscapes, that's when we can start saying, okay, well, you know what? Alice with Mindscapes, you throw her up here, but that's not what we're doing. So as of right now, this is what I would say is your top 6. Arguably, I'd even say top 5. If you remove Ye Xunguang, because obviously she's like God tier, she's number 0. This is arguably your current top 5 DPSs without me doing the thing that I did last time. Okay, I still believe in that. But if I needed to give you an accurate, this is top 5 and like there's no 2 people take up one, it's this. These are the characters in no particular order. These are your top 5 because I'm not fucking ordering this shit because I don't feel like it. Moving beyond this point though, and we'll go back to this here to talk about supports. Is Ishwin top 5 without Lucia? Ishwin is just a top 5 character, period. But like when we talk about a top anything, we're not talking about a top like, hey, if you took away their best tools, are they still top 5, right? Like that's just not really fair to do. If I took away all of Miyabi's best tools, which I mean she has a lot, then she just Miyabi, right? No one plays into a matchup by themselves. Even Ye Xunguang, as strong as Ye Xunguang is, she's not playing into a matchup by herself. She still has a team. It's not fair to anyone or even the discussion at hand to do something like that, right? It's kind of like if I'm like, oh yeah, hey man, Promea would be a really good character, but only if you have her premium team. If you don't have a premium team, then she's the worst character in the game, which just isn't true. So we move on from that point. do we even need to do supports, guys? I feel like supports are so easy, and especially because they refuse to split this between stunners and supports. I guess you can leave defense and support, but whatever. Like, at least split stunners. It's gotten to a point now, especially with Nangong Yu. This is a full-blown stunner. Nangong Yu is not a support character. Anybody telling you Nangong Yu is just a support character, they might be a little dented right now, okay? This character is not just a fucking support character. Dylin sure as fuck is not a support character. That bitch punches holes in walls, all right? So, like, come on, bro. Just make stunners and give them the value they deserve, because especially at this point when it comes to team building, even at this point, we're seeing the results of all of the problems when it comes to someone who is new to the game looking at team building or resources like Prydwen. I said this was going to happen months ago. I said this last year, and I said whenever you have someone that's coming into the game and they're looking for information, when they see something like this and they say, oh, all the stunners are just supports, and they think I can just replace my stunner with a support. That's what a lot of them have been doing. A lot of players are like, yo, I'm trying to run insert DPS here plus Suna and Astra, but it's not working. Like, I'm not getting the clear that I want. I'm trying to run Astra and Zhao, but I'm not. Hey, you guys said I need 3 stuns. I'm barely getting 1 stun. What am I doing wrong? You're not playing for the stun. You don't have a stunner. No one on your team is doing stuns. You got 2 evasive assists talking about you need a stunner because they don't understand it. It's just not the same thing. So it's important to separate that. Anyway, going back to what I'm talking about with these, if we were looking at the rest of the DPS characters and going for like, okay, well now what's tier 1, right? Because now tier 1 would essentially be what people think is tier 0.5. Tier 1 still is good, by the way. Tier 1 just means that you don't have any like fucked up things in your kit. Each one of these, all 6 of these characters have something fucked up in their kit. It is what it is, right? So if we're talking about tier 1 characters, Yidhari obviously goes in there as a DPS character. Orphe goes in there as a DPS character. Alice goes in there. Sanbi goes in there. Where's Seed? Seed goes in there as a DPS character. Arguably, Evelyn. I think these are the only tier 1 DPSs that you have in the game right now. Oh, I guess I didn't include sub DPS, right? If I'm including sub DPS, then yeah, Vivian, because she's a DPS. Yeah, Vivian. Oh, Bonway. You're right. Bonway. These are your tier 1s. And now that I have Bonway there, yeah, Evelyn's definitely not in tier 1. These are your tier 1 DPS characters in the game right now. Yidhari, Orphe, Alice, Sanbi, Seed, Vivian, and Bonway. All of these characters can comfortably clear any form of in-game. It is what it is, right? You should always think of a tier 1 in any tier list. Tier 1 is your baseline. This is where the power line is, the power floor, okay? So when a character comes out, you want them at a minimum, you want them in tier 1. And if they can get higher than that, fucking awesome, beautiful. They go lower than that, now you need to be considering like, okay, if I care about meta, do I really want to pull this character? And that's what that is, okay? Anyone beneath tier 1 as a baseline, it is what it is. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean these characters are bad or that you shouldn't pull them or not use them, right? But they all have their own thing that they're using. So let's talk about Orphe. Orphe, right, is, we talked about that with Cecilia. Orphe's thing though is that she's kind of locked into Aftershock. And so the same thing that Prydwen is trying to say with Cecilia, where like, oh, well, she's locked into electric teams. Again, I thought that whenever, you can even go back and check the tapes. Go back and watch my Cecilia impressions video where I talk about Cecilia. And at the very end of the video, I quite literally say, yeah, I don't know how Cecilia is going to perform. I think with Seed, she's amazing. This is probably like a really strong team. Outside of that, I think this character falls off. Something along those lines. Come back 3 weeks later, which is, you know, around the time of Cecilia releasing officially and whatnot, and you see my opinion has drastically changed. Cecilia is an amazing character with or without Seed. Seed just makes her that much more fucked up because they're allowed to do these things together. Sorry, you're saying that she's ass? Orphe's not ass, bro. If you got Orphe and bricked your account, you did it to yourself. I'm not even gonna like hold you on that one, because the only reason you should have pulled Orphe was for Sanbi. And that, like, or if you were playing Seed, Trigger, and Orphe, that's the only reason you should have pulled Orphe. But because I know, and I'm not saying this about you specifically, but like I know a lot of players, what they like to do is, I really want this character, I'm gonna pull this character. They pull the character and then they're like, oh man, this character doesn't do what I thought they did. And it's like, yo, it's kind of your fault, right? You're saying Orphe's ass, but she's not, bro. I don't know how to like convince you of that. I don't think I need to convince you of that, but Orphe's not ass. If you want her to get buffed up, sure, but that character's not a character providing defense shred to her entire archetype and being the best sub DPS / support for her archetype is insane. Mind you, she's one of the only ones for Aftershock. If you're playing anything Aftershock, if they ever make anything Aftershock, you have to play Orphe. You're literally just gimping your damage, man. It is what it is. If they add Aftershock, she would be solid. You already have Aftershock. That's what I'm saying though. When I say like people who pulled Orphe and then like now they're saying like, oh, Orphe's bad, she's ass, whatever. Okay, well, like, why did you pull Orphe? Oh, because I really wanted Orphe. Who do you have on your account that benefits Orphe? Well, I guess Soldier 11, you made a mistake, and that's okay, right? Just, you know, move on from it and recover from there. It is what it is. Because if you play Sambi and Orphe is still a very solid team, very strong team, arguably top 10, especially for the fact that they can pretty much like clear anything in the game. As long as it's not purely resistant to both of them, they can clear everything in the game. Now, where this team struggles, which is unlike what Sissia has, is the fact that if something is electric weak, most of the time it's also fire resistant. If it's fire weak, then most of the time it's electric resistant. And that's just a game design problem. That's not an Orphe or Sambi problem. Seed's damage is literally on par at this point with Sissia. And even if you wanted to argue like Sambi, I think M6 Sambi though, or not M6, P6 Sambi is still out damaging, but the rest of the team and kit comes into play there. And now that Seed has partners that she can play with way more comfortably, cough Sissia, the flow of this character feels way better than it did on launch. Vivian just got a massive boost with Promea. We really don't gotta talk about Vivian too much, right? Especially with the fact that the Abloom type damage is now a huge factor in the game, or becoming a huge factor, a huge damage type in the game. Vivian is just gonna skyrocket. Bondway is literally one of the other Rupture characters in the game, just very solid all around the board. Tier 2, as far as like DPS goes, these are the DPSs that are what I would consider niche. These DPSs have very specific, if you do this thing, if you fight this thing in this matchup, this character would like transcend time, okay? Evelyn, Hugo. Technically, I want to throw Jane in here, but Jane has a very hard stipulation. The first stipulation is that Jane wants that M2, which is just not fair to the rest of the cast. The second stipulation, which is much more reasonable, Wind. When Wind gets here, Jane is going to be fucked up, and you're going to see her jump up in the tier list, or at least in people's opinions, which is why I would put her up here. As far as another DPS goes, Minato, I think Minato is like definitely up here. I want to say Yanagi is up here. She's very niche at this point. Haramasa is proving himself very well. He's just solid. Soldier 11, amazing. And if, in fact, Soldier 11 might arguably be at the top of the list. Bernice, Piper, nah, maybe. Piper might still be in the same position with Jane. Once Wind gets here, these two might just have another boost of relevance again. They might have another boost of relevance again, which will be okay for them. And that would be fine. But I guess Piper performs, but I don't see Piper performing in the same way. I don't see this performing in the same way. How big is the gap between Bondway and Evelyn? I think at this point it's pretty big. Like it's big enough for them to be in a separate tier is what I'm saying. Bondway's cracking 65K and then Evelyn is only hitting 25. But there's a clear power difference. I think I'm gonna bump Jane and them down. I'm not gonna hold you. I think I would bump these characters down. They would go down. Minato might go down. So I think one of you asked me like how would I explain this as niche? So what I mean by niche in this scenario here is that they're specialized, or you're bringing them in for special or specific moments. When it comes to Evelyn is just like a very solid character across the board. She's just missing power. She still doesn't have a designated disk drive set. She does have the supports, which in this case being Astra, and obviously vertically investing just makes them that much better. So I would say Evelyn sits at the top of this tier. She could easily creep up in a tier above her if she wanted to, or rather if the game allowed her to. Soldier 11, in my opinion, is right behind her. I think Soldier 11 with the new buffs, especially if we're considering P6, Soldier 11 P6 is just phenomenal. She's a standard character. You can pretty much get her for free. M1, M2, M3, M4, whatever the case may be. She is just rock solid, which is why I felt comfortable moving Minato down, because I just don't think they're on the same level. Hugo is literally definition of niche king, okay? As long as I can stun the enemy like a healthy amount and I know how to play the team, Hugo clears. Like even versus Thrall, I know people were having issues like, oh man, Hugo's bad for Thrall. I did it. I made R2 do it. R2 did it again. Yoji did it before he quit. Lin did it. Did I get Soul to do it? I don't think I got Soul to do it. Kate did it. What people were saying is bad for Hugo wasn't actually bad for Hugo. It was just annoying to fight. But it's not like it was impossible. We just didn't want to do it. But it could be done, no problem. Hugo in Shiyu defense, absolute monster. Just like how I was explaining with Miyabi, and that might be another video that we talk about here shortly after this. But TLDR, there are characters that are just better for Shiyu defense versus Deadly Assault. And that's fine. You don't need to use one character for every single mode in the game. I understand a lot of people, you know, especially free to plays, they get a character and they're like, hey, This is all I got. Cool, I get that. That doesn't take away from the point that's being made though. If Hugo was a character and you grabbed him, that's your ice DPS, that's all I got. And you're like trying to fight every single ice boss with Hugo, you need to understand matchups. And if you keep bringing Hugo or any character into a bad matchup, they're not gonna perform well, okay? Fighting games, I reference that all the time. Let's just use a matchup that I'm a little bit more familiar with. Hopefully I don't get this wrong. Ibuki and Dalsim. I hate that matchup. Okay, Ibuki is the ninja girl, Dalsim is the Indian stretchy guy, okay? Typically, Dalsim beats Ibuki because he just doesn't have to let her touch him. And so as an Ibuki player, you need to figure out certain things that are going to allow you to touch him. And once you do get close, you don't let him go. You don't let him escape. You stay on his ass. This is where you get mix-ups, wake up, Okizeme, things like that, right? Vortexes with the kunai trap. Okay, all that kind of stuff. And this is how Ibuki players or any close range character beats a zoner, Dalsim, right? Once you get in close, you stay on him. Think of the same concept with Hugo. You need to have a game plan for your bad matchups. However, being a gacha game, you can only push that so far. And so you just have bad matchups. It's cool. But that's what that niche means in the case of Hugo, right? Very good over here, not good or not as good everywhere else. Cool. Nagi, polarity disorder. We already know about that. We're chilling on that. Haramasa is closer to the Evelyn category at this point after the potential changes. He's just a very solid character. The only thing he's missing is just literally power. Like the moment you give him more power, any way that you do that, a stage buff, a team buff, a new disc drive set, a new character, right? A new support, whatever, or new tech, any way that you do that is just gonna push him up the tier, which is fine. And then Bernice, unfortunately, I don't know why they gave Bernice potential changes and they just keep fucking her. It is what it is, right? Like she just cool beans. The final tier, I guess I'm through the final tier, but the one that I'm going to talk about, because I don't want to like stretch this out way too long, right? Because we're comparing this and whatnot to the rest of this kind of stuff here. And like I said, all of them are sitting in tier 1. I just think Prydwen's tier list as a whole is getting way too crowded, right? Which is kind of what we're breaking down now. So the final thing here would be Piper, Jane, Minato, Ellen. I think the new Grace, well, she might be, but she's on here. Zhu Yuan. That's all my DPS. Okay, so this is what I would say is closer to like that next tier, which would be tier 3, okay? These characters, a little under niche, they need a lot to work with. In order for them to get the clear, this is where you're getting the wheelchair comps. This is where you need a Mindscape plus whatever else is going on. No, guys, I did not forget about Nekomata. Nekomata is not, she needs way more, okay? She needs a full-blown surgery. It is what it is. But yeah, these characters need a little bit more. Now, to be fair, Minato very strong, right? For what it is, he chilling. He's an A rank. Piper, same scenario. She's chilling. Jane needs more. She just needs more. Like the game has gotten more aggressive. It's gotten beefier, and she's just unable to keep up with her current kit and like what it's able to do. Ellen has had kit problems since launch. This character, her entire kit, it's not fixed. She needs more. It's a good start with her new potential changes, but again, they changed the game. They gave her potential, then they changed the game, and she just can't keep up. Again, Grace got a potential change as well. Grace is kind of keeping up, but Grace needs more power. So this is going to be where you're seeing players play like Grace plus Vivian, or you're going to see like, I wouldn't recommend this, but I've seen it, Grace and Promea because of the Ablooms. It's whatever, it works. Mono shot Grace or a mixture of that, little things like that, right? You just got to get a little funky with Grace and then she'll give you what you're looking for. But she absolutely still can get clears, or rather she can get clears now. She was not getting clears before. And then finally, Zhu Yuan. As much as I love baby girl, that is my wife with the fat ass, okay? She needs power. She needs more. She needs a kit change. She needs a wheelchair comp, like whatever the case may be. The boss has to be completely in her favor. There's so much that needs to be changed when it comes to being at the bottom of this tier. And the only other DPS character we have is literally Nekomata, right? Like Nekomata, Anton, Billy, that's it. And even to be fair, you probably would catch Billy in this tier. Like, let Yojimbo tell it to you, and because I don't play Billy to know that. I don't even study Billy outside of watching Yojimbo play. So, and then Slade used to play a lot of Billy, but I haven't seen him upload in so long. So Billy might just be up there. Not Corrin. I don't think Corrin, I don't think Nekomata, and I don't think Anton are cutting the cheese right now. I don't think they're cutting the cheese. So it is what it is. But this is where I would leave like an entire DPS tier list in the current state of Zenless Zone Zero. Again, coming over here, it's just too cluttered. And some of these, I just don't agree with them, right? Certain like things like partner, she doesn't need Vivian as a partner. That's not mandatory for her to be in tier 1. It's just playing it. What's wrong with Ellen's kit? Ellen wants to be an evasive, aggressive, and parry slash counter style character all at the same time while still benefiting from her team. She wants to share field time with her team, but her animations are long as shit, which was supposed to be used for like, oh, we can use long animations so we can swap out, right? And do the quick swap thing. The problem with that is, in order for you to get the setup for her to do said long animation, the setup part is long as fuck as well. So then you got to swap off, you got to buff up the character. And then if the enemy is playing very aggressively, because all the bosses at the current point in time are also more aggressive than Ellen, it's just not helping her at all. And she's still lacking damage. If we're comparing everything, the fact that enemies are ice resistant at this point, and if you're playing them into ice weak bosses, then it's fine. Like if you're playing Ellen in a Thrall, you're having a good time, right? Like you're chilling. Just play a strong team and you're good. But that's where that whole thing comes into play, where it's like you just need more power. Ellen by herself, whatever. Ellen plus Dylin, all right, now we're cooking. Ellen, Dylin, M1 Astra, Ellen, Lycon, M1 Astra, now we're cooking, right? Once you start adding power to these characters, Mindscapes on the supports or stunners, stronger teammates, better disc drive sets that come out in the future, highly favorable matchups, that's when they start to climb up and like, okay, this feels really good to play. Basically, the further you go up on the tier, the less you give a fuck about the state of the game. Is that a good way for me to put that so people can understand what I'm saying? Tier 0, you don't care what's happening in the game. Nothing affects you. You always win. It's always my turn. Tier 0.5, I still don't really care about the game, but if I was targeted, then we might have a little bit of a problem. I need to work a little bit harder to get what I want out of this problem, but I can still get the job done. Tier 1, I'm chilling. I'm good. I'm solid. I'm at the baseline. I care about what's happening in the game. If something very drastic were to happen, it could affect me positively or negatively. But as of right now, as long as I have a good team, my solid team, I'm chilling. Evelyn's that low. Okay, I know that I've already finished everything, so I don't want to go backwards. And I understand you guys think like tier 1 and below is like low as shit, but it's not. Tier 3 might be low, yeah, but tier 2 doesn't mean low. Tier 1 is your baseline, okay? So literally think of tier 1 as the floor. Tier 2 is one floor below. Tier 0.5 is one floor above. And then that's it, okay? So when you get beneath tier 2, that's when you have a problem. I'm not going to go over supports and the stunners because I barely agree with any of it. I'm not going to hold you. Like I think Nangong Yu and Dylin, specifically those two, have ruined stuns so much like as a category that they are in tier 0. Then there's tier 0.5 and it's empty. And then you have tier 1 stunners. I think supports are almost the exact same way. I think Suna and Yuzuha are the only supports currently in the game that sit in tier 0. Then I would say Lucia, Astra, and Nicole sit in tier 0.5. And I would throw anything else in tier 1. I do not think Zhao is comparable to the other characters just because she's free. Lucia is not a tier 0 character. Lucia is tier 0 for Rupture, but she is not a tier 0 support. No. If they buffed Pan by like 2%, he would start putting up the same performance or close performance to Lucia. So it is what it is. But that's it. I have burned an hour of this, which is crazy. But let me know your thoughts and opinions on that. I tried to do something a little bit differently this time. Shout outs Ren for giving me the advice on that. We didn't do a full-blown tier list because like I said, some shit doesn't matter, right? You guys don't really give a fuck about Anby, base Anby, Anton. That shit doesn't matter. You guys mostly care about the DPS and the supports. And this is what I got coming out. I'm going to probably tweet this and we'll see what happens. But that'll be it for that. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on today's video. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Smell you later.